What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Moderately Educated News Network, where you are here to get a moderate education on the news that's coming out. So, guys, today we're going to be getting into a kind of scary topic. There's a prison inmate who essentially tried to assault a woman while they were being held. And essentially, guys, this is some absolutely crazy stuff. If you're interested in hearing more about the news, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and share with a family member to keep them informed as well. But we will go ahead and get into the video. I'm here with my lovely co-host Xavier, who has the video pulled up, so we will go ahead and get right into that.
Guess there's no sound for this first bit. That's fucking crazy.
Insane.
Yeah, forgive me, guys. This is my first time seeing this. Actually, I had not previously watched this
Did it
before
freeze?
hopping on video. No, I think it was. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's crazy.
He slides all the way over there. He pulls his
Oh,
pants down and starts trying to assault her.
and then yeah, that's just the. It didn't freeze. It's just a freeze frame. But yeah, that's
Oh,
insane. Okay, excellent.
literally gets right past that guard.
For
Absolutely insane.
for sure. So. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts? What are you hoping to get out of this conversation?
Guys, I overall think that we have a
Mr. President,
very
we actually have
large
someone that, and before
I think we have a very large problem in our prison system. I don't think anybody should be going to prison with the expectations of having their cheeks took by somebody who wants to party like Diddy. There's a bunch of diddlers out there. That lady was literally unconscious. Like she was actually like asleep. And the fact that that inmate, knowing his history, knowing his record of sexual assaults, this man literally was not handcuffed. He was in the room with women and was able to just slither across the floor like a snake to violate that woman. Is That's insane. I don't think anybody should be violated in prison at all. They literally should have time to reflect on what they did wrong and be able to become productive members of society. I think prison should be more about rehabilitation than it is about like cheek busting and your life being over and you never being able to do anything ever again. So that goes for men's prisons. That goes for women's prisons. And then there also needs to be some discussion about issues with trans women in women's prisons that are impregnating some of those women, because that's crazy as well. It's just a lot going on, and there needs to be a lot of prison reform to fix these issues, in my opinion. X, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I would argue prison reform does need to take place. Not for the reasons of rape inside of prisons though. I think largely in you could argue I would rather make arguments over the case of recidivism and how likely you are to recommit crimes once released. I think those rates are probably I'm actually not gonna
They're
make up a number.
ridiculously high.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna make up a number, but they are ridiculously high, especially among people that receive felony convictions. You see, lifelong criminals and rap sheets longer than I don't know my arm. So, uh, yeah, I think we could talk about prison reform. I think it's called the PREA Act, the Preventative Rape and Something Act that was passed, and prisons and institutional systems actively receive funding um, to curb sexual assault and rape in these institutions. But that being said, I don't think is should be the main driver of why prison reform needs to take place. I think that stuff is terrible, but I also the rate of consensual sex in prison, I think, is much higher than that of rape. I mean,
I
I
would most likely agree with that.
I don't think that in male or female prisons that inmates or staff raping other people is a hyper common occurrence. I think more often than not, people engage in consensual sex, which is also I don't know if it's deemed illegal. I think it's illegal. But it's against the policies of these institutions that inmates are not allowed to engage in sexual activity while there. So yeah, I would say yeah, rehabilitation. What does rehabilitation look like? I think non-violent offenders should be, if they're in there for any amount of time, I think we have means to earn degrees in prison, to learn trades, work, and do things that can make you a productive member of society outside of it. I think that the stigma of felony convictions out in the workforce, the removing of that stigma and not disbarring all felons, but maybe violent felons. From participating in certain aspects of society again would be more appropriate. I don't think barring felons from voting is necessarily appropriate because why would I participate in a society where my voice isn't heard or I don't have rights or where, X, Y, and Z. If I
It
don't
makes you want to be a criminal,
yeah,
basically,
if I don't
because you
feel like
can't
I'm
do
ever going to
anything.
be truly accepted back into society, why would I conform to its rules? So I think there are a lot of things that we can do in that regard to make non-violent offenders feel, or even in some cases, after like maybe psychological testing and some things like that, even violent offenders should begin to reintegrate them into society. But I think there's too much stigma around felony convictions, and it bars you from too many people from attempting to get jobs and lead productive lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. And I don't think that rape is the only issue in prison at all. That's not um why this video is brought up or anything. It's just more or less the fact that somebody should be able to serve their time without having to go through that, you know? That's absolutely insane. And I do agree from the standpoint that non-violent offenders definitely should be kept separate. They should have a whole separate gen pop from violent offenders because they just go in there and they get used and abused half the time. And when people come out, they can be unrecognizable. So, yeah, I agree. Having the ability to learn trades and different things would be very helpful. And I do think the stigma for nonviolent offenders, like if you have like let's say petty theft is the reason why you got arrested, right? Then it's like, okay, the man stole because uh he was poor, he had a family to feed, he felt like he had no other options. Now, is what he did right? No. Is him going to prison and not being able to do anything for the rest of his life as far as getting work, right? No. And that's why it's actually really interesting. There's this story about this man. He was I believe 18 or 19. He got sentenced to 13 years in prison. I want you to look it up if you can. He got sentenced to 13 years in prison. I forget his name, but he essentially never got arrested. But they basically had him booked in the system, and it was because he stole. And this individual literally felt so guilty. He robbed a Burger King at gunpoint, I believe. And he felt so guilty that he literally lived the rest of his life on the up and narrow. And when they were supposed to arrest him, the day that they didn't, he literally was so grateful for every single day that he was free that he literally decided to change his life, and he created a business, started a family over those 13 years. And then after the 13 years were up, they realized it was his release date, and they realized there was no person to release. So they essentially went, they took him to prison, they found him, took him to prison. It wasn't like he tried to hide anything. He was still voting. He was still being a regular member of society. He ended up being a productive member of society. And then the judge ended up ruling that because he changed his life, he did not have to serve that 13 years. So I think having judgments that are actually helpful towards rehabilitation and understanding, hey, this person is working to change their life, that would actually really help to fix the system as well. Were you able to find a story?
No, I found a guy that robbed a Dollar General, but he went to jail. So,
That's
um, yeah, no, I like that story. That's cool. Yeah, people that commit crimes are not irredeemable, so we don't need to treat them as such. I know you mentioned a point about um trans people, specifically trans women that haven't had bottom surgery that still go to women institutions, and have managed to get female inmates and members of that institution pregnant. I don't feel like that's a large issue at all. I found like limited cases of that. And for the most part, I think like healthily over 80%, but that's just a guess. I think even more prisons inside the United States based off assigned sex at birth and the genitalia you have versus what you identify as. I think largely in more democratic states like California, New York, and Washington, you might have a couple of these institutions that exist, but largely people are categorized based off of their sex, not off their gender identity. So I don't think that's too big of an issue. There are instances of this happening, but I don't feel like it's a common enough occurrence that uh, it warrants like a big issue being arised from it. I think it is a problem that we need to find a solution for, but I don't think this is like an epidemic that occurs. Um, but let's see. Like I said earlier, I believe largely that people engage in consensual sex. I'd imagine if I was trans and in a female prison and the one person with the dick in that room, I don't think I'd have to do too much raping. So I don't, yeah, I don't think that that is like rape in that instance is a big issue. But from the trans perspective, I was doing some research and it finds that trans people, I'm actually going to share my screen momentarily, they experience an extreme amount of sexual assault and rape and things from other inmates. Um,
Whenever they're in the population of their
yes,
at birth sex, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
When
facts.
from staff, from inmates, and do engage in more active rates with consensual sex and things of that nature. So I think we do need to protect the women in these institutions from violent offenders. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. There is a biological difference between a trans woman and a woman. Um, so that needs to be taken into account, and not just have essentially, somebody that could have went through puberty as a male in these predominantly women spaces, when they could be stronger, more prone to physical violence as men are. I also read a statistic where 99 anywhere from 92 to 99% of rapes are committed by men or males. This is so it warrants investigation, but I don't think it's a big issue. I think largely protecting trans individuals from men would probably be a bigger issue in my book than protecting women from trans, because I don't feel like there are enough instances of trans raping women for it to warrant negating trans protections. Uh yeah.
I mean, given that the trans community is not a very big amount of the population, it's like, I don't see necessarily them being in Gen Pop with men. Like really what the solution is, just long story short, there's some prisons that have alternative lifestyle zones, right? And that's really just the solution. No women will get assaulted, no trans people will get assaulted. Everybody can just serve out their sentences without having the fear of being violated or assaulted. That's really the solution. And I was able to send you the article in the chat, by the way.
Oh, excellent. I will take a second and look at that. Yeah, I would initially that was the solution that crossed my mind as well, but I think I have to do more looking into oh, okay. I have to do some more looking into on staffing and things that occur at prisons and see what resources they have available to them. But that may put too much of a burden on staff members if we're having to, you know, manage two different populations in one jail. You could do, I guess, trans only jails, but that requires the whole institution, and they're not a large enough percentage of the population to justify that. Um, yeah, I think it's a tricky situation just because of their uniquely small circumstances that deserve consideration, but it's tough to manage on such a small scale. So uh an alternative, I guess, in my mind would be increasing funding for these prisons, to hire more guards, to do something to where we can better protect people, and maybe certain sections of prisons. But I would, at current funding levels and current resource levels, I'd be worried about prison's ability to manage that. So,
Yeah.
but
And
I do agree with that.
I was gonna say the guards, I feel like need to be vetted like way better because for anybody that's watching the scene Prison Break, I feel like there's too many Bellics in prison as far as correctional officers go. And then there's a lot of female COs that sleep with inmates and it's just a whole mess. So um yeah, there definitely needs to be better vetting. And I feel like anybody that gets one of those positions, they need to be tough, they need to be stern, but at the same time, I believe they should have the goal of rehabilitation and not some power trip. Like at the end of the day, especially if you're dealing with nonviolent offenders, like that's still a human being. So,
Well,
yeah,
I would argue that a correctional officer's role would not be rehabilitation, but to adhere to policies within the system, and then we just have a larger sum of like psychologists or professionals that come in and do actual rehabilitation, psychiatric treatment, and things of that nature. I think having compassionate COs would be like beneficial, but I don't think that needs to be in their job, in their job description is
for sure. Yeah.
just to be clear, but I'm splitting hairs at this point. Do you have anything else you'd like to add on this topic, or have we hit all the
No, sir. That's it. I'll
cool?
let you close this out.
Sounds good. Well, that being said, thank you for joining us, everyone. It's been a pleasure here. Let us know what you agree with, disagree with, like, comment, subscribe down below. Definitely, any and all feedback is appreciated. So, that being said, you all have a beautiful rest of your evening, night, week, and life, and you will see us next time here on the Moderately Educated News Network. Adios.
Peace.